Hello, everybody. Hey, Alex, what's up? How are you feeling?
What is
All
up?
good?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm
Nice.
good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So excited to be here. It's been a while. It's been 4 months since we did our last live stream. Anyway, let's say hi to the audience. Let's see who we have here. Hello, Magdalena. Hey, Anoy? I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Sorry. Alaba, hey, how are you doing? Robert, nice to have you. Erwin, Victoria, Vishwanath, great. I'm so happy to see all the people here. We've got 40 people live. All right. So on today's live stream, we've got 7 parts. We're going to start off talking about the software Wized app. Then we'll showcase the new Wized Webflow app that we will be launching um, in the near future. We'll go over the Wized education, support, business, some stories from Alex, and finally end it off with the AMA. How does that sound, Alex? All good?
It sounds amazing. Let's go. I see a lot of
Okay, so
people
let's
saying
start off.
hi. So, yeah, cool.
Okay, so since recent times, we had this embed to testing group, and then users have access the closed platform users have access to embed one, and there has been some confusion amongst people as to what embed one is and what embed two is. So moving forward, we're just going to refer to it as WISD. We're not going to distinguish between one and two, and today we will share our screen, show to you what these two things are, and clarify any questions or any confusions that you may have about it. So Alex, before you share your screen, can you tell us a bit more about embed 1 and embed 2 and what these two terms even mean?
Yeah, sure. Well, so the embed, it's actually just a term that we use internally because in Wiz there are three things, three main services going on. There's the configurator, which is what everyone knows already. It's the application where you can go, you have a dashboard, and you can create all your projects and you can see all the settings from the project. And then we have our server, obviously. And then the last thing, what we ship to the sites, to the our users' sites, it's what we call the embed. So the embed, it's basically our runtime. It's what powers West. It's what makes your website interactive based on what you created in your project. So we've basically been throwing these embed one, embed two names to the community because it's essentially how we call these things. Now, as Rohan mentioned, there has been a lot of confusion because essentially the current Wiz version is Wiz 2. Because before Jonas joined FinSuite and started building Wiz with us, there was a previous version of Wiz that was just Wiz.io. And even before that, there was Platform Wizard. So it's actually technically there were even more versions. So talking about embed 1, embed 2 versions, stuff like that, and also saying that Wiz is version 2, so many version numbers that are have been generating some confusion around people. So now that we're getting close to launching what we call the embed 2, which is the new runtime, and I will go through it in a second, we've realized that we really don't want to be confusing people like that. And once we go live, it's really not necessary to talk about versions, not yet at least. The reason is because embed 2, what we are about to ship very soon, it will be the main runtime from now on. We've made huge improvements. We've made huge changes in the underlying logic, in the underlying technology, in how the embed is built and how it runs. But people don't really need to know about it. People just need to know that Wist is Wist. It's a product that will be very powerful, very stable, and super helpful to build web apps. And we'll just talk about versions in a foreseeable future if there are some new versions upcoming that are worth discussing. But our plan is to make this transition as less confusing to people as possible, if that makes sense.
Great, yeah, absolutely. And now, can you show us by sharing your screen visually how embed 1 looks like? and how embed 2 looks like. And then later we can talk about the performance differences in them.
Sure. So, well, before doing that, as I mentioned, most of the things that you will see here are just the same ones as embed 1. But essentially, embed 2 it's a full rewrite of the runtime of Wist. There were many things that needed improvements, and that all of that has been addressed in embed 2. And the reason why we're doing versions, why we're calling embed 1 and embed 2 differently, it's because there are breaking changes between them. And when there are breaking changes, you have to version them somehow, right? There are some things that you usually used to do in embed 1 that now are going to be different. And it's what I'm going to show you in here. But it's not like you're going to have a completely different app. So the configurator, it's still the configurator. Functionalities are mostly the same. There are just some new functionalities that are just applied to embed 2. But the experience is mostly the same, but improved, if we can say that. So I'm just going to make a quick walkthrough. I'm just going to go through, what are the first differences you will notice between going on an embed 1 project and in an embed 2 project. And then maybe we can keep talking about all the different improvements that we've implemented in embed 2, all the new functionalities that you will be able to use, and the future iterations or things that we have planned for it. Okay, so I have the same project, okay, but I have it implemented in 2 different Wized projects. One is the Wized embed 1 project. So the only difference is that it's using embed 1 runtime. And then we have Wized embed 2. Okay, same project, same elements, nothing changes in how the Waffle site is built, but you'll see many differences. So the first thing that you'll notice is that when you are creating an action in embed 1, you probably got used to this kind of editor. So anytime that it required you to add some custom logic, you would have this editor that allowed you to write stuff like you could do something like true. And Wiz kind of interpreted that this was a Boolean, as you can see here. You could do numbers, and this kind of interpreted that this was a number. You could do joint things like, hey, two, and then this just becomes a string, right? And then you could add custom logic doing these double curly braces syntax. This is a specific syntax for Wist. So this is just something that it just thought for Wist, not for JavaScript in general, but for Wist. And here you could essentially add some logic. You could do, I don't know, like let data equals to 1, and then you could say data, and then it returned data somehow. But this is not really very efficient to work with, especially when you're going to the code route. So in embed 2, let me just undo this because I don't want to break the project. So I'm going to do like this. So in embed 2, the first thing that you'll notice when you start creating actions, when you start doing writing things, is that you will get a real code editor. Okay. And essentially in this code editor, you have all the goodies from a code editor. You have auto completion, you have linting, like if you do something wrong, you're going to get errors in here. You have all the controls that you would like to get from a code editor, like you could do find and replace. You can move things around very simply, like this. You essentially have the same experience as VS Code. So if you're a developer who's used to developing custom apps, now this experience is going to be way more familiar to you because it's powered by the same engine as VS Code. So that's good. Now, the second difference is that probably you for people who have not seen anything related to embed 2, is like what the hell is this return in here, right? So the main difference and what's really a huge breaking change between embed 1 and embed 2 is that in embed 2, we are writing real JavaScript. We are not doing custom syntax that just applies to Wist. We're still doing the same things. You don't need to learn new concepts. You can still apply the same concepts, but we are doing it with valid JavaScript. So we're doing it with real functions. This is just a function, as you can see here. Any field, if I start creating an action, and I'll get to this because there are also all differences. If you do anything like set a variable, and you want to set a value. This is a function. This is a JavaScript function, which is good because it's still very easy to implement. It's just as simple as understanding that from a function, from a JavaScript function, there you must return something explicitly. So you have to return whatever you want to return. But at the same time, you have the full flexibility of a full coding experience. Like you could do anything. Hey, you could create arrays. You could interact with the arrays like this. You can see how I'm getting auto completion for everything. You could do anything that you can come up with. And this, as long as it's valid JavaScript, which is the main point, this is going to work. And you just have to return whatever you have done for this function. So this is one of the key differences. And we think that people might be shocked at first, but it's really not that hard to grasp when you once you understand what's a function. Um, but we'll talk about education later on. Okay, cool. So more things that you will notice. By the way, Rohan, I just have one screen, so if you need to stop me to ask me questions, please feel free to do it, because otherwise I
Sure.
I don't see you right now. Okay, cool. So there are many things right now that are improved here, and when it comes to using the configurator, thanks to this embed 2 runtime. Like for example, you will see how. Um, Let me just do an element, and I will add this heading, and I will set a text. You can see how most of it looks like the same in embed 1, but now maybe I can say, hey, we're alive, like this, and I've got immediate updates in my canvas. So everything that you do, or mostly everything that you do right now in Wist in embed 2, it's going to be automatically reflected on the page, which is really good for development. So anytime that you change something, hold on, I lost the action. Anytime that you change something, hello Rohan, this is immediate. We're not refreshing the page. We just see the changes right away on the page. Very cool. Okay, more things. Now, this embed 2, it's not only about, improving how we write the code, how we write all the actions and requests. This is also focused on, there's a main reason why we're doing functions. Okay. The main reason why we're doing functions is firstly because we wanted to go through a route that it's real JavaScript and not custom syntax. The second thing is because performance, because we've been able to have huge gains in performance by making use of functions. But I'll talk about performance in a second because I think it's very exciting. We can also now do many things that were not possible in embed 1. Like, for example, we have a new events system. So now you'll be able to trigger events whenever a custom condition is triggered, whenever an attribute is present. You may already know this. Whenever a request finishes, whenever the page starts loading, whenever the page finishes loading, you can just do many different things thanks to that. That's
So
why we
those
are
are
breaking
new.
down. Go ahead.
What you just showed, is that new, Alex? With the
Yes.
events?
Yes, correct. It's new, and it allows people to just do some more cool things. Like maybe when the page starts loading, and only for in one condition specifically, like maybe when the path is equals to the home page, maybe only in that case you want to do you want to perform a request, or you want to set a cookie, or you want to run a function, which is another new thing that you can do in embed 2. Now you can run arbitrary functions, which is very cool because now you don't have to be writing custom JavaScript aside, like you have the Wiz project, and then you have to be writing custom JavaScript and hosting that custom JavaScript somewhere else. You can just put it right in your project. You can run functions at any moment, in any condition. In these functions, because of this new improved embed 2 runtime, we allow you to do everything that you could do through the Wiz UI right inside a function. So for example, imagine that I want to set a variable, same as you would do in embed 1, that you would go and just say set a variable and then set a value to the variable. You can still do it. You can set a variable. You can just select the variable and then just set a value to it. But you can also, if you're just like coding, you can run a function and you can just say variable.selected equals to like this. It's as simple as that. It's just JavaScript. We allow you to mutate anything from the data store, and it's just going to work. Because in Embed 2, reactivity also it's something that we've been focusing a lot. Reactivity, the new reactivity model, the new runtime powers all the performance improvements, and also these little things that maybe many people will not even use, but people who really want to dive in and make extend Wist are probably going to appreciate a lot. So you can set variables, you can just set cookie values, you can change navigate away. So you by just saying, hey, I want the href to be a different place like this, we're going to navigate away. You can fully control your application both in just using the UI like you did before, or by writing code still right inside the configurator. Very cool. Okay, what else? I'm going to be talking about performance later, so maybe we can also talk about accessibility. I think that we mentioned this, but we now have a. Hold on, let me go. I think I just broke something. That's why we're still not released. So that's why that's why some things still not work correctly. But may go here. But essentially, we've been also thinking about how to improve the experience doing everything that you would do in Embed 1. So every single action, every single request, every single um, piece of the data store that powers your app has been rethought in Embed 2 to make sure that it accommodates not only for some basic use case, but for complex use case and for future implementations or functionalities that we'll add. So for example, now you have access to forms like this. So now anytime that you submit something, you will get the data from all the inputs of that form, which powers, enables people to just use forms like natively without any dirty hacks making the forms not accessible. We also, for example, power just uploading files through a custom REST request. So I'm just going to show an example of things that we've been changing. So for example, in Embed 1, whenever you wanted to do an upload, a file upload, you would create first an app, like I'm just going to do some placeholder, blah, blah, and you would create some base URL, whatever. And then maybe doing an upload, you would create a new request, and then you would have to go and say, okay, I want to do a file upload, and then I want to select Xano, and I want to use a app resource, and the app resource is just this Xano app, and then I have to define all of that. See how complex it is in Embed 1 to just do a file upload. Whether when in Embed 2, all it takes is just to go ahead and I'm just gonna grab a Xano. I'm just gonna go, oops, not in here. I'm just gonna go, I say a post method, and I go to the body, I say file, and then in here, I just say have.myform.imagine that I have a file input in here. That's it. That's gonna take care of the file uploads, is gonna take care of everything. So we've basically simplified many of the different bits like this. This is just one example, but we essentially redefined the experience in all of the actions and requests, trying to make sure that they are simpler, more extensible, and more powerful, obviously. Any questions so far?
Great. I've got a question. So visually, we noticed in embed 1, there is a data in and a data out panel,
Mhm.
and there's also a panel for auth. But those are missing in embed 2. What happened there?
Yep. Good point. Same as I mentioned before, simplicity. Um, Simple is best. Data in, data out, they are just requests. So initially, data in was thought of, okay, we're pulling in data, data out, we're sending out data. But if we try to just go to the very basic concept of doing a data in and data out, both things are just the same, are doing just a request to a server. And that request, it's either sending some data or it's still sending a request to get some data. But you're always doing a request. So we thought like, okay, wait, where do we really need this data in and data out? We actually don't, because it just requests. So another this is a great example of just simplification. In Embed 2, you just have requests. So if you need to do some REST implementation, like here, you just get the method. If it's a get method, it's probably data in. If it's a post method, it's probably data out. But you really don't need to think about that. You just need to think about what you need to achieve. I need to do a get request to the Pokemon's endpoint. Sorry, I need to do this. I'm confused between both embeds. Like this. And now I can just make the call. And can I get an error because this is probably not defined because I didn't plan about this. Pokemons or Pokemon, probably. We'll see if that, yeah, Pokemon, like that. So now we're getting this. And so just simplifying things. I'm going to give you another example of how we simplify more things. And it's that in Embed 1, when you create a request, you would have all the request settings. And additionally to that, you would have the trigger and the after request. Now, this it's powerful in some way, like because when you create a request, you can have the logic from that request in there. But the problem is that we saw that there were many ways of doing the same thing from different places. For example, when you're creating an action and you want to trigger a request, when, for example, you click on a button, you would have to go to an action, create a click action, and then perform a request. But that same request maybe has an additional trigger that has been created inside the request in here. And we tried to avoid doing this. And instead, we also unified how things are done. And for example, now in requests in Embed 2, you will notice that there is no trigger, there is no after request. You just define the request, and that's it. And the reason is because in Actions panel, you can do all of that. You can, for example, on an event, you can wait until a request is finished. So I'm going to wait for this request, and then I can do any actions that I want. Or maybe when I'm doing an element and I select an element, and when I click on the element like this, I can perform a request. But basically everything just it's on a single place, which is in actions. So not only we're trying to simplify things, we're also trying to organize things, make your projects more organized. So the logic just resides in a single place instead of scattered around in multiple places. Because we want to make sure that you can scale up your apps to be very complex, not just a few actions and a few requests. Cool. More
Wow,
questions?
great. Thank you so much for that captivating explanation. I think you were very detailed and um, well explained the differences between embed 1 and embed 2. So I'd like to know if working on embed 2 delay our planned launch of Wist.
It did. And it did for
Okay.
quite a
So
long
then
time. Yeah.
so then why couldn't we launch embed 1 and continue working on the itinerations?
Yeah. Okay. So there is a law that I would like to mention. It's called the Hirum's law, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But essentially, it's just a concept that it just explains that whenever you have an API that it's public and people are consuming it, every single bit of that API, somebody's going to depend on it. So you cannot be making breaking changes because you're going to be breaking sites, right? And the way that people are interacting with the Wiz configurator, they are essentially interacting with, they are creating an API. They are the config from the project, what powers embed 1 and embed 2, and essentially what you load on your site, which is the configuration, all the actions, all the requests, all the variables, everything. That's just that's just an API. That's something that you've defined how it should be working. Now, in order to make many changes that we've done in Embed 2, we had to change many underlying things that people depend on. Like, for example, we've changed how you write the code. We've changed how you define the actions. You've changed how you define the requests. We've changed many things that if we suddenly just swapped it in your project would completely break. It needs a migration to happen, right? So before releasing something that we knew that we wanted to drastically change, we just decided to just take a step back, rethink the whole thing, and make future plans. Like, what do we want to see in here? What are all the changes that we know that are going to be needed so we can release this as not only just a product that works and that's it, but a product that it's very powerful, that it's really easy to iterate. So it's really easy to just keep adding features, changing how things work, etc. Um, and once we had all the list of changes, then we know, okay, we cannot release the new version until we have addressed all of that. Because if we do it too early, then people are going to depend on that. And we're going to need people to do another migration, which is not convenient. So we've, this delay, but it's mostly because we want to make sure that the experience for everyone it's the best possible instead of just, breaking things constantly. Does it make sense?
Yes, and I think everyone is just very, very eager to get their hands on the new Wized. And so I want to ask: is it worth the wait? Can you show the differences performance-wise? We had a look at how the workflow would be different, how the visual is different of the UI. But what about performance?
Yeah, cool. Okay, so as I said before, one of the things that not only about developer experience or the functionalities that you can implement on the site, we also wanted to improve how the site behaves. Like once you have created everything, once you just go live on the site, we want to make sure that the experience for your users, for the people who are using your site, it's the best possible. So we've been also redefining the whole runtime because of that. And I'm going to share a link and maybe we can pass it. Let me, because I didn't pass it to you before. So I'm gonna throw it here in our internal chat. People are not seeing that, but I'm talking with Rohan right now in the chat. Can we share this link in the YouTube chat so people can just go ahead and check it out? But essentially, um, there are some huge performance improvements between Embed 1 and Embed 2. Okay, we have an official benchmark that it's created using the JavaScript framework benchmark, which is a standardized way of comparing JavaScript framework's performance. And we're still not perfect. We're still trying to improve some bits. But I can show you some results for doing stuff like creating 1,000 rows, selecting items in a row, deleting items in a row, swapping rows like this, or updating every 10th row like this. If you compare this between embed 1 and embed 2, you'll notice a huge difference. I'm just going to create 1,000 rows, and it's going to take about 5 seconds, 4 seconds maybe. But instead in embed 2, it's just immediate. Or I'm going to select an element in embed 1, and it's going to take 4 seconds, 3 seconds.
You know,
I'm going to
it
do it
was
in
so
embed 2.
fast. It was so fast in embed 2 that it almost felt like you were doing a show hide action instead of creating 1,000 rows.
Yeah. So we can select very quickly. If I try to remove something in embed 1, it's going to take a while because the bigger the project is, the more performance flaws, let's call it, embed 1 had. But in embed 2, we tried to make sure that you can scale up your project to be as big as you want. Doesn't matter. I'm just gonna clear everything. I'm gonna create 1,000 rows, and I'm gonna update all of the every 10th of the row. And we're doing this for, look at how many items. like this. I'm going to clear everything. I'm going to just create the 10,000 rows. This is a little bit more performance intensive. So it kind of took 2 seconds, which is normal. But I'm still going to just do updating every 10,000 row. We can do it. And I'm not even going to attempt to create 10,000 rows in embed one because it's my computer, it's going to freeze because it really has um, it really has some performance improvements that needed to be done. So we can share this, but essentially, on average, doing these official performance benchmarks, we've went from um, 30 seconds. I don't know if these are seconds. Yeah, so 30 seconds, or no, 3 seconds for creating 1,000 rows to just 150 milliseconds, or three and a half seconds for updating 1,000 rows to just 50 milliseconds, stuff like that. And on average, Embed 2, it's about 50 times faster than Embed 1. So
Wow.
hopefully your site's experience, your user's experience, especially on mobile phones, because mobile phones are usually, less capable. Um, the performance is going to be way better when it comes to full sites that have many things going on, like lists that are rendering, actions that are being triggered when you click on them, requests that are being performed, anything that you can think of. Embed 2 will handle it quite better.
Great. And Emmanuel had built a project to show a real use case. Could you share that as well? Looking at the stats was impressive, but can we also look at like a real world example?
Sure. Yeah, so this is the project that it's actually not mine. This is by Emmanuel. So the Emmanuel is building this in the current Fancy Plus live streams. So if you wanna see the live streams, you know what to do. But essentially, in here we can see how things just work more smoothly. This is a to-do list. I know it's very basic, but with simple things as forms support, we can just do a to-do list that it's completely accessible. Like I can create new items just with my keyboard. Like this is a new item, and this is just doing my keyword. Go ahead.
Creating a new item in real time. Like
Yes,
it's
this
so
this is
native,
syncing
like
with correct. This is syncing with Supabase in real time. So this is not just happening in local. If I refresh, this is still here. Like everything is synced. You can just toggle this on and off, and this is just real time. Like everything that I'm doing here, it's being synced with the database, and it just works so good, very good,
yeah,
like this.
unbelievable
So
how
cool.
fast that is.
It is, and it would be even faster if it was just local. But this is being synced with the database that it's I don't know where it is this database. So yeah, very cool. Um, so you can now in Embed 2, hopefully this is what we're striving for. You can build web apps that really feel like if they were built with React or Vue was built. Like we want to just you to ditch what you're doing and just use it with and not feel that you're lacking any features, that you're lacking any performance, that you're lacking any whatever you would like to implement with that framework. So that's our goal.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Alex. And for those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and I will go over them just after the end of this part, which will be soon. Up until then, I have a couple of things to share with you. So we're really proud at FinSuite to share that we did our first ever enterprise Wized project. So, a company called Jack.org approached us with a problem. They had a WordPress learning management system. Uh, the project is called Be There Certificate. They provide free mental health training course. It's very popular, gets a lot of traffic, but WordPress was not keeping up with that traffic. It was crashing, it was slow, generating incorrect reports, and it made WordPress made it difficult for the team to push updates. So they approached FinSuite to rebuild the project, and the team at FinSuite did that using Webflow, Wized, SendGrid for emails, Zano for the database, and Google OAuth for registration and login. The project was a great success, and this has now become the biggest project in Wist. Just in 1 month, Wist executed over 500,000 requests, handling a database of more than 2 million records. And since launch, nearly 10,000 people have registered as new users, and 4,000 of them have completed the entire course. And Wist has powered all of that. So we are very happy. Massive kudos to the FinSuite team. So that would be Rory, James, Alex Dram, Robert, Emmanuel, and Magdalena. So, Victoria, could you please share the link to Be There certificate? For those of you who are interested, you can register there and learn more about mental health. It's absolutely free. Alex, any comments about the project?
It's an amazing project. It's very interesting. And it's still not even using Embed 2. So we
Hmm.
really want to see how the things improve when we migrate that project to Embed 1, to Embed 2. Yes, still using Embed 1 because it was built before Embed 2 was stable enough.
Great. And another bit of news about Embed 2, we've got Glenn, who is part of the testing group. He has created a course around Webflow, Wizd, and Zano. He's got about 25 people whom he's helping to learn about building web applications. So he shared a tweet about this course, the community, and we'd just like to give him a shout out because he's such a massive contributor to this, uh, to the Wizd building experience. Great. Okay, so now on to the questions. Let's see if there are any. I know there was one from Dennis Garg. In the beginning, he asked, "Is there a reason why cookies used instead of local storage? Will there be a switch there next year because Google Chrome wants to block third-party cookies by default?"
Well, but cookies that are used in West are not third party, are first party cookies because the cookies are set on the domain of the site and they never leave that domain. So they're specifically set for that domain. So there isn't really a downside on using cookies. The good thing is that you can implement an expiry time. Maybe you don't want to do that, but you can now run functions in Embed 2, so you can potentially store things by writing custom JavaScript. If we, as I mentioned before, we plan to iterate as much as we want, or as much as people wants the platform. If there's a lot of people asking for local storage, maybe we'll think about it and just add support for it. So no real reason. It's just that it's convenient. So far, we haven't seen many use cases for local storage, but we can consider it absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And Shirlate is asking, please give us the new pricing. Following the bubble recent mess about next pricing, I think it's important for users to know that we can rely on Wist. So, Alex, do we have any information on the new pricing?
The new pricing was shared with the FinSuite Plus users a long time ago, and we haven't made any changes to it. Um, but essentially, the new pricing it's still based on sites. There are a few things that change, like the amount of page views that you get. There are some extra plugins that will enable you to purchase some extra functionalities, etc. But I think that we should be able to share it soon. The thing is that we've been holding back about everything related to pricing. We just wanted to make sure that we are doing the right thing when it comes to building the product. But if people really needs to know the pricing, we can just make it public. Our planned pricing. I think that in it's somewhere in our project, but I didn't have it ready, so I would rather not share it now. But I don't think that you have to worry about anything, like no sudden. like what happened with Unity was a real mess too. Like suddenly having to pay a lot for using an app that you've already been logged in. We're not planning to do that. Don't worry. We're just going to make some changes, just to accommodate all the new functionalities and make sure that everyone's happy. All the new pricing was approved by the FinSit users. So all these, the new upcoming pricing was presented to many people in the community. They gave us our feedback. We changed everything. Everything we hope that it's approved by the community. Um, and I think that we could release it soon. We're not going to implement it yet because we want to do many things before making the pricing switch, but we could just release it in case that people are curious about it. So don't worry, we'll make it public.
Great. And would you say that if people want to upgrade to lock in the current pricing, then now would be a good time to do that because we would still honor the existing pricing plans, wouldn't we?
Yeah, so everyone who has a plan, obviously, it's not going to be changed right away. We'll probably just give some time. So I actually don't know how to answer this question because we haven't even decided how to handle it internally yet. But probably yes. So if you have an ongoing plan, don't worry. That project is going to stay as is. Nothing's going to break. So feel free to be. I don't know the word for it, but don't worry about that.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next part because I've seen that we've already 42 minutes into the stream and I don't think we expected part one to take so long. So the next part is about the Webflow Wized app. Before we do a screen share, Alex, can you please tell us what it is and what are the benefits of the app?
Cool. Okay, so you probably already know, but Webflow released a new functionality called Webflow Apps, which is an official way of creating extensions in your designer. So it was just natural to think about creating an app for Wist because we're essentially interacting with with Webflow, right? So we have an app that is going to be released soon. And this app for now has some basic functionalities, but are very powerful, especially when you are managing big projects. Because in that app, you can see all the elements that are affected by Wist right inside the designer. You can change the Wist attributes right inside the designer. You can see all the pages where an element is being affected by Wist right inside the designer. You can see the whole structure of how something is working just right inside the designer. And then if you need to tweak some action that is affecting an element, you can just click on that and it's going to bring you directly into the Wiz configurator. So we're trying to make the experience seamless between Webflow and Wiz, and this app is going to be the perfect bridge for it.
Great. So I'll share my screen now and show the users a version of the app. So, so this is the Wized app. As you can see, we've got three panels here. This is the navigator, the element manager, and search. So in search, you will get a list of all Wized attributes that have been added in a project. If you click on an element, I can see right here that this element has a Wized attribute called sign up email address. You can see that even in settings down here. And if I want, I can edit it right here. So go into the manager and I can change it and that will update live. I can even delete that if I want to. If I want to add a new attribute, I can click on any element inside Webflow and add an attribute just like that. And with search, we get the full list. It can be filtered by pages, it can be sorted by the most occurring or alphabetical. And what else? So we can click onto this. We also see what actions are attached to that particular element, which class does that element have. So that helps us in identifying it inside of Webflow. And we can see all the pages where this Wized element is present. And I think that's about everything. Essentially, this app helps you manage Wized elements inside of Webflow. So that's the purpose of it. Alex, anything to add?
Yeah, that will keep adding more functionalities to the app. So right now, it's, as I mentioned, it's mostly informative, but anything that we can think of or people ask for. So if you have ideas, please let us know. We plan to be updating this app and making it as powerful as possible to improve your experience when working between Webflow and West. So please give us your feedback and we'll hear.
Great. Thank you. Now, on to the next part, education. So, our current intelligence center is on Gitbook, and we're going to migrate that to Vercel. In fact, 99% of the work is done. So, Alex, can you tell us why we are migrating to Vercel? What's the benefit of doing that?
Yeah. Well, there are actually two things that we have to discuss here. One thing is migrating from Gitbook to BeatPress, which is a custom documentation site that we built, and another thing is the whole Vercel migration that we've done, which it has also different reasons. But essentially, right now, if you go to help.wiz.com, that's using a service that's called Gitbook. It's just a way of creating documentation. It's very nice. It's very helpful. But we want to give you the best experience possible, not only inside the app, but also in all the resources. So in education, in the documentation, in our main website, whatever. So in the documentation, we've essentially just created the entire docs using a framework that it's powered by Vue and Vite, that it's called VitePress. Many of you probably know it already. And the good thing of that is that it's going to allow us to extend it with not only just content like text and videos and stuff like that, but we'll also be able to add custom components. Like maybe we want to create a code editor for you to do some playground stuff, or we want to show you how an action is implemented right from the docs, and we can do some interactive things. So this is just like an investment to have more flexibility when defining the docs, and we're gonna launch it soon. For now, it's just gonna contain the docs from Embed One because it's what's live for now. But once we release everything that is upcoming, the docs site will also be fully updated with all the new content. And the second thing, that it's actually the Vercel migration that you were asking for. Because not only we've been working on many updates that you've seen in the configurator and the embed and stuff like that, we've also been doing many improvements just in the way that we work, in how in our code bases and the services that we use, etc. And essentially, we migrated everything to just a single place to unify all the services, which is Vercel. So our configurator app has been migrated to Vercel. Our server, it's actually about to be migrated to Vercel. So it's going from a hosted Node.js to serverless because we wanted to make use of what serverless provides us. We've migrated where the embedded's located. We've just implemented a reverse proxy thanks to that, etc. And the good thing of that is that we're improving also how we work in the team. So we have now better collaboration tools. We have now fully integration with GitHub. We have now instant deployments, instant rollbacks. We just have a lot of things that allow us to iterate better the platform and feel more confident when we're deploying new things. So that's
Great.
it.
Great investment in education to provide everybody the best platform possible. Speaking of education, Emmanuel has been really busy. So, can you tell us what he's been up to?
Yep. Okay, so Embed 2 release, it's not going to come with just that. It's going to come out with as much education as possible so we can just take you by the hand and make sure that you're not getting lost in the journey. And Emmanuel, it's essentially working on two main big projects. One project is a knowledge base for all the key concepts in West, especially around Embed 2. and you'll be able to quickly consult things like, hey, how do I set up a function? How do I return a number from a function? How do I add a conditional so I can conditionally display an element? How do I create a request? How do I do something after this request finishes? So everything that we can think of, Emmanuel is recording like small videos that are just straight to the point, explaining the exact thing that you need to know. No boilerplate, no wasting time, just straight to the point, which is going to be very helpful once we release Embed 2, because obviously there are some changes that people need to learn about. And the second thing that Emmanuel is working, it's what we're calling the developer roadmap. And it's essentially just inspired by Webflow University. So Webflow has a huge and really good university where they just take you by the hand from not knowing anything to becoming a pro developer, essentially using Webflow, but at the same time on HTML and CSS, because that's what Webflow provides. Webflow is a very powerful way of creating HTML and CSS visually. So we're doing the same, but for Wist and JavaScript, because all the key concepts that can help you become a better Wiz developer, we're striving to teach it to you, going from not knowing anything to creating the most complex apps that you could think of. And we'll try to make sure that the process is as smooth as possible for you. So just think about that. That we are kind of doing the same idea as Waffle University. They are a huge inspiration for us, and Emmanuel is working on that, and it's going to be very cool. So stay tuned for that.
Great. And apart from the work in the background, we're also sharing resources live and real time with the FinSuite Plus community. Emmanuel built the task tracker app that you were demoing earlier, and you've also interacted with the community building a job listing app. So if you want to learn from Alex and Emmanuel live in real time, ask them questions, see how they are being built, then please join the FinSuite Plus community. Moving on, part four, support. So, Alex, we're also investing a lot in support. We've got an AI chatbot in Discord to help us with instant problem solving. Can you tell us something about this project?
Well, it's actually a very cool project. So if you're part of the Discord community, you may have noticed that there's a bot right now that automatically answers some of your questions. So we partnered with an amazing team that created this bot for us, and we just fed it all the info that we knew about Embed 1. For now, it's just Embed 1. It's going to have Embed 2 in the future, probably. But for now, it's Embed 1. So you can just ask a question, and it's powered, I believe, by ChatGPT in the background. It just have all the documentation in under the hood. It has all the content from our YouTube videos, and most of the time, because still AI doesn't give accurate answers all the time, but most of the time it can solve your questions. So if you want to play around with it, just go ahead and join our Discord community.
Great, yeah. And it's not just a chatbot that we invested in. We hired another person on the support team to cover more time zones. So we've got, I believe, 2 to 3 people to help us with support. So if you have any question at any time, please send us a message on our in our chat box, and that can be accessed from the Wist configurator. Okay, next we are going to migrate the updates page from the Webflow CMS database to GitHub. So Alex, why are we doing that?
Well, actually, I've seen a few people asking for that, and the reason because we are migrating things is because we just want to unify everything on the same place. Our code base is in GitHub, our roadmap is in GitHub, our issues are in GitHub, our project is broken down in GitHub. So it made sense to just have the public changelog in GitHub too. So we are planning to have a. It's not released yet, by the way, but we are going to just have an updates page, a changelog page, and a roadmap page that is just synced with our GitHub organization. This way, we can provide you better, more informative updates about what's going on in West, what we're planning to do in West. So it's going to be a good investment. It's going to be released soon, and it's actually one of the things that we are able to do thanks to the migration that we talked about from Gitbook to VidPress. So hopefully, you'll see how everything is just making sense at some point.
Great. And a couple more investments in support. Next, I'm going to go over the status.wiz.com. Um, and tell us a little more about that. And after we can talk about an incident that happened recently as well.
Yeah. Okay. So not only we're scaling the app, so not only we're scaling the product, we are making sure that this product is resilient, that the product is scalable, and that people can rely on it. Right. We'll talk a bit more about a process that we're doing right now related to compliance, but we're essentially just making a lot of investments around handling potential issues and making sure that the issues don't happen 2 times in a row, that we just make the product as stable as possible, and we can put out fires as quick as possible when something goes wrong. So we've been doing investments. For example, now that we have a public status page that you can access in status.wiz.com that allows you to subscribe and see if there's anything going wrong in West. We have a team. Our team is now ready to make updates in there to just keep you updated when something goes wrong, so you know exactly what's happening and when it's resolved. And with this, we have many things that we've been working internally. We have escalation policies. We have incident management, so we know exactly how to address things. We are investing in improving how we deploy new updates. We're investing in how we keep the new functionalities versioned properly, so we can roll back if something goes wrong. We are just doing extra backups of our database to make sure that we can do recovers from disasters. We're just also working on making sure that the platform is enterprise enterprise grade ready, because we want to work at enterprise level. We want people to feel like they can build the next Amazon with Wist if they want to, without worrying about the stability of the platform. So these are things that maybe you don't notice as a user, but it's been taking quite a long time for us to nail down and make sure that we're doing the right things.
Great. And Alex spoke about policies. So he was referring to SOC 2. We have made a huge investment in trying to become SOC 2 compliant. All major companies are SOC 2 compliant. Take Webflow, Notion, Slack, just to name a few. And essentially, what is SOC 2? It helps us to protect the data of our users and of the company. There are a lot of procedures and protocols and documentation. So everything is documented, everything must be followed to the point, and the FinSuite and Wizd will be audited by an external company to see how we do things, how we are compliant. And after that, we are then issued with the SOC 2 certification. So in the future, Wist will become SOC 2 compliant, and you can be sure that your data and your customers' data is safe with Wist because we have policies in place. Even if something goes wrong, we have a disaster management policy in place. So we will have training sessions and education sessions to know what to do when something happens, or what to do even in a regular scenario, because there are policies on software development as well. um, so in that regard, Alex, What Wized related updates did we make to become SOC 2 compliant?
We did a lot, but essentially we did. We are now monitoring all our services to make sure that to be notified as soon as possible when something goes wrong. We are monitoring all the errors that happened. So if somehow the app fails for you, we're gonna be notified about it, so we can quickly jump on it. We're doing intrusion detection, so we can prevent um, being hacked. We are doing penetration. We're preventing. Well, we're actually going to undergo through penetration tests. There are going to be these third-party company trying to actually hack us. So we are getting ready for that. We are just, as I mentioned before, we're implementing stricter development protocols. We're implementing access controls. So we just have the correct people working on the right places. So nobody who's not supposed to deal with important data, it's actually not doing it, etc. So these are not things that you perceive, but things that we've been just doing internally for a while already. Um, a lot of work there.
Yes. And it's not just SOC 2 to make all our European friends happy. We are also collaborating with another agency based in Germany to become GDPR compliant. So WISD can be 100% GDPR compliant, and you can feel confident in using our application. So Alex, briefly, can you tell us what what changes have we made, or what changes will we be making to WISD?
Yeah. So we want to make sure that everyone can build projects with West, and you know that are GDPR compliant. So we're working with a company that's helping us define all our data privacy policies, everything that we need to make sure that has to be implemented for us to be GDPR compliant. On top of that, as I mentioned before, that we did migrations of the services that we use. Like we migrated many services into Vercel. We've also going to migrate the database into the European Union if that's necessary. We're going to migrate our server into the European Union if that's necessary. So this company that we're working on right now, this is a process that we are currently doing. It's going to help us define all the changes that we need to do to make sure that people, even from Germany, which is the strictest country when it comes to GDPR, is people from Germany are just good to build projects with Wist. So not specific updates that I can tell you about, but things that we are currently in a process of doing, that we've prepared for to implement as soon as we can.
Great. And finally, can you tell us briefly about the investments in the error tracking and interactive session support?
Yep. Well, as I mentioned before, now whenever you get an error, we are instantly notified about it, so we can address that. But also our support team. So whenever you open a support chat inside the Wiz configurator, our support team will be able to help you better by if if you need, by seeing your session. So if you really had some issues going on, they will have better feedback, instead of having to ask you for your console logs, or like, how did you reproduce this specific thing, or what are you trying to do. Our support team now has better tools to give you the right answer.
Great. Yeah, so a lot is happening in the background. Moving on to the next part, Alex, I wanted to know, how has your experience been as the product owner of Wist? How do you feel about it, and how has your life been so far?
Well, it's been a roller coaster, I'm not gonna lie, because I joined the team and it was amazing to work with the team. But then when I was in front of the product, and it was my time to lead how things are done, and I had to make the difficult decision of, what did we discussed before, of do we just keep doing things as we're doing now, or do we take a step back and try to rethink many things in the app. And I made the risky decision of doing that, of taking a step back and just reworking some bits of the product. So it's been a wild ride, but it's been really worth it, and the results are really very promising, and people in the community are really already appreciating them. So so far, very good. It's an amazing team, it's an amazing community, and you feel really rewarded working with both of them.
Great to hear that. And then moving on to the final part, I guess the question that everybody has on their mind: when do we expect the launch, and what's holding us back?
Yeah. Okay. So before addressing this question, I would like to um, address something else that we discussed with some people from the community, which was that during the last months, we've actually had some communication issues with our community, mostly around false expectations. The reason was because I came in the product, we had some predefined deadlines before many things were rethought, and we tried to keep the promises with those, those original deadlines and stuff like that. So there was some false expectations going on in the community, which generated frustration, and which we understand. We had some very good conversations with people from the community who shared their concerns with us, like, hey, you said that this was going to be ready by this time, you said that this was supposed to be working and it's not working yet. So we decided to also just be more realistic and say that, stop giving false expectations and trying to stick to the original deadline that we had, to the original timeline, and instead be a little bit more flexible when we talk about dates. As I mentioned, we are making a huge rethink of the app, which many times what happens is that something that you didn't think of just appears, and suddenly you have to push back a date again. And now when you think that you're almost ready, then suddenly you find some very specific edge case that it makes you again rethink some things, and you have to push back the deadline again. And we don't want to go into that rabbit hole again, because we really want to avoid the frustration of waiting for a for a date and then not having any updates. So what I'm going to say is that all these updates are going to come soon. Soon means not a year. Soon means hopefully in weeks from now. But I don't want our team to commit to a specific date, because we are potentially going to be generating frustration in the community. And that's not what we want. That being said, all these updates, if there's people who is really motivated to be an early beta tester of Wized 2, they can just reach out to us. We have a group of beta testing people. You can join us. If you really just need to use Wized, Embed One is stable enough. You can keep using it. You can still build apps as you people have been doing for almost 2 years already, and it's gonna work fine. It's completely fine. So you have the choice of just keep working using West, all good, or being an early adopter and just jumping into the beta testing team with us, or just waiting until everything is released. And as I mentioned, it's gonna be soon. No specific date, but we are pushing, we're moving as fast as we can to make sure that we people are not waiting for too long.
Yes, and I would also say that we should move away from the term beta and call it
Yes.
early access, because the app works, and we have proven use cases for that. We have live projects built with Wist. So it's a closed platform. You can get early access. If you've got a real use case, please send us an email. Please contact us on Twitter or X, or write to us on Discord, and we can give you access to the app. All right. So let's see if we have got any questions in the comments before we wrap up the stream. So I see Darshil Dixit is asking, what about the ability to change data centers based on locations?
This is something that we've been thinking about. Um, I cannot give you an answer now. It's something that we might implement in the future. It depends on how many people really need it and how worth it is after we've undergone through the entire GDPR compliance process that we're doing right now with the company that we're working with. If this is still something that enterprise companies or people really needs, we can always think about it. But for now, again, it's not something that's going to be available right away when we launch.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Then I see Mihai asking, will PWAs be possible with Wized? I don't know what PWA is. Do you know that, Alex?
Progressive web apps, sure. So,
Probably.
well, I think that it's actually very possible because when we were thinking the entire concept of West, I had to think of all these future use cases. Like, what if we implement client-side routing? Like, if people uses Barba.js, for example, to create the ultimate web app experience, or what if people needs to implement the progressive web apps, stuff like that. So all of this has been thought, and it can happen in the future if people really needs it and the community asks for it. We have a lot of things that we're working on, and progressive web apps, it's not on the top of the list, but it's in our backlog. And if we see a lot of people asking for it, maybe we can change priorities.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Ali is asking, for new users like myself, should we wait for Embed 2.0? What advice do you have for people like Ali, Alex?
You don't need to wait. Just go ahead, jump in embed 1, because when you learn Wist, that knowledge is going to help you a lot when you start using embed 2, because embed 2 is just an improvement on embed 1. There are things that change, but it's not that many things really. Mostly it's how we do things internally, not you. um, so don't wait, just go ahead, use access Wist, start building things, and the moment that you have access to embed 2, the migration is going to be as easy as possible. We've already been migrating some projects, and the migration process, it looks quite simple. So it's not like it's a very hard process to migrate a project from embed 1 to embed 2. So for now, just don't worry. Just start using Wist and create cool things, and then you will be able to improve them in the future.
Great. Thank you, Alex. There is a follow up question by Dennis Karg. He says, all third party scripts that set cookies, such as Wizd, are, as far as I know, considered third party cookies. Maybe I am also misinformed there. So, what do you say, Alex?
I think that he might be right. I'm giving answers just what I what my immediate knowledge it is, but I'm not always right. So Dennis, we can definitely keep these conversations in. For example, actually, you know what? There is a something that I wanted to share before, and it's that we have a public request for comments repository. That it's these. How can I share this? I'm gonna send it to you in here, which is with RFCs, where we just have open conversations with the community to talk about things like this. What about dealing with cookies? Should we also offer doing using local storage? So, Dennis, I would love if you could move that conversation to the public forum, because then I will be able to do some more research, give you a better answer, and see if it makes sense to implement it in West.
Great. Thank you, Alex, for the response. And I would say the final question from Gregory. Are there any plans to integrate Webflow CMS via API? For example, to be able to render a list of CMS items via API with the power of Wizd gives for ordered lists, but still have static page URLs.
You can technically already interact with Webflow CMS because all you need is an API key. And in Wisdom 1, you can just create a REST request. You can add the API key, and you could just set that API key as a private value, so it's not exposed on the client. But there are some other limitations to working with CMS API from Webflow, and it's, for example, the rate limits. Because right now the Webflow CMS API, it's more meant for management rather than for live usage, so production usage on a real web app. You'll quickly run into rate limits, and yeah, I don't know exactly how to answer because you can technically use it, but I know that if we try to give support to it, it will still have some issues going on related to the rate limits. So for now, I recommend that you try it out. Just implement a REST request. Just call the API using. Just go ahead in the developers documentation from Webflow, and you'll be able to set it up. That being said, if there are any updates in the CMS from Webflow that allow us to better interact with it from live sites, like some API that is specifically designed for loading data right inside the browser from people, then we'll definitely consider implementing that.
Great. I see we've got another question that has some popularity. SSR, will it be released? Is that on the roadmap?
It actually was in very close roadmap when I joined the team, but there were many things that did not work correctly with the approach that was being taken in number one. There were many edge cases that probably would cause you a lot of frustration when working with SSR projects by Wist. So this is another thing that we decided to just take a step back and make sure that we nail it down correctly before releasing it. So SSR, it's still in the roadmap, but we decided to push it back because SSR is actually a big thing. It's not something, like a small feature. It's something that requires a lot of moving parts to work together. You need people to connect the domain to your site. We need to fetch the sites. We need to dynamically populate them on the server. We need to make sure that the caching is right, so we are not doing a lot of work every time that we're trying to render something. We need to make sure that the performance is actually nice. There are many things that have to be really well thought. So SSR is going to take a while. I'm not gonna lie. SSR will come eventually, but this is one of the things that I think that we have to nail down.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Alex. And I think we went over a really nice long list of work that we have been doing in the background over the last 4 months. I will share it all as a tweet thread, but it's just been amazing. We've been busy and we have not been able to communicate because so much is happening, but not all of it is done. So it's all still very much a work in progress, and hopefully we'll have more updates as such to share with you during our next Q4 live stream. So before we conclude, we have the FinSuite Jungle Jam happening in Barcelona. Alex will be there. So those of you who have registered, we look forward to meeting you there. And we'll also do a
Rohan will be
live.
there too.
Yes. We'll also do a live stream from there with all the team members. So it's just going to be a fantastic experience. Of the FinSuite team will be there for a week, and Jungle Jam is for a day in that week. Great. So
I would
Alex,
love to see
any
people from the community.
yeah, sorry, yeah. So any closing remarks, Alex?
Um, well, I just got you. Sorry by saying that, but I would love to see people from the community in Jungle Jam. So I know that there is a huge list of people host confirmed already that's coming. But if you're just nearby, just drop by. We want to know you. We want to interact with you. Um, Again, I want to apologize for all if there has been some frustrations about release dates, as I was mentioning before. But we are really working towards making an awesome product that hopefully many of you will appreciate. And I already appreciate all the support that we have from all of you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for just sharing things on Twitter, being excited about upcoming updates, trying new things with us, and just planning to use Wist and Finsuite, just working with us. So thank you.
Thank you everybody for being here. And for those of you who are still here, please give us a like on this video and do subscribe to our channel. I think it helps our helps us in some way. And thank you for being here. Have a nice day. Good luck with all of your Wized web app building projects. Bye.